nobody at this point believes the Panthers need to consider drafting a quarterback at a position of real value, right? So it makes me wonder, as you hear conversation about both Sheduer Sanders and Jackson Dart, and those are two guys who I think a lot of people look at and say, probably not really a first-round talent, but quarterback need being what it is in this league, probably could go. You could justify taking in the top 15. So, Lauren, that I have said for as long as we've been looking at this draft class, I think Sheduer Sanders is the most NFL ready of all of these guys. I don't think he has the highest ceiling. I don't think he will have the best career. I think he's the one that could come in and immediately take over as a starting quarterback. If he is sitting on if he's still sitting on the board at number 8, and you're the Panthers, what do you do? Like, are you already figuring out what are the phone calls to make, who wants what? Like, would you be willing to, like, if it's even moving down a spot, would you be willing to trade with, say, the Saints? He's in the division, but it is a chance to get a little bit of a bounty here.
I think you have to. Yeah. I think even the Saints, and it's hard for me to say that, but I mean, I think so. And I'm sure they're doing that. And I can't help but wonder, I'm not saying that they don't really like Ted McMillan. I think they do, but how dumb the subterfuge or attempts at it get during draft season. Right.
Of course.
I couldn't help but wonder if they wanted people to think that was a direction that they would go in, offense or a playmaker or whatever. But I don't think anyone's going to think they would draft Sheduer, though, so they can't fool that. But you got to be able to know who you're going to call there, and just But I hope I'm wrong about this for his sake, because I don't disagree with you entirely. Like, I think there's a lot of things he does that I like a lot, Sheduer. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling he's slipping.
I mean, I think he's slipping.
I don't know if they'll get any takers, is what I mean.
Yeah, I think he's slipping. I think Jackson Dart is rising. I don't believe either of them have long-term futures in the NFL. I could justify Sheduer better than Jackson Dart.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say, but everyone loves Jackson Dart. I know why.
I mean, part of that being an SEC guy is like, I've seen him play. Like, have you not seen him play? That's part of what I think every time someone brings that up. I do think that when you talk about moving up and down the draft board, I think there is one dude worth trading up for in this draft, and I don't think the Panthers want to pay the price to move up to get Abdul Carter. And so it makes me wonder, again, quarterbacks being quarterbacks, regardless of who they are, what is the price you have to get if you are the Panthers to move out of the top 10? Because like I said earlier, there are a lot of difference makers on the defensive side of the ball in this draft, and you are drafting in a different class of dudes if you move down to, say, I don't know, what if Seattle at 18 wants to move up to get their quarterback of the future? What if Pittsburgh at 21 wants to move up to get their quarterback of the future? What, like, Lauren, put yourself in Dan Morgan's shoes. Like, what do you need to completely change the ceiling of the guys that you are capable of taking?
Yeah, I mean, are you saying, like, in terms of the trade value? Yeah.
What do the Panthers need to be getting back?
I mean, I think you need to have their first, assuming the team has one to give you.
Yeah.
You need to probably take their second and then some other stuff, I would say. I mean, easy for me to say some other stuff, but, like, that's what, I mean, I would at least want, like, a first and a second and something else, or, like, a first, a third, and maybe, like, some future pick or whatever. A future pick in later rounds or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, but I would want at least one pick for this year.
That's a 1 and a 3 this year and a 1 next year, I think is, I mean, to go down from 8 to 13 or 13 spots, 8 to 21, I'm going to need a future first.
And look, we do a lot of, like, I don't know economics that well, admittedly, because I didn't do great in my classes in that. However, I do recognize this. Quarterbacks in the NFL are what we like to call, it's a scarcity, right?
Yes,
There's
indeed.
a scarcity of NFL ready quarterbacks. And there are teams who hear all the time about how they don't have a quarterback and they become desperate. I think you've heard Bomani Jones talk about this a lot on his podcast, of, like, how thirsty they get to just fill that just at least get people to shut up for
Yeah.
a minute about how they don't have a quarterback. And so, like, the desperation that is there is something that the Panthers should absolutely exploit at this point, because there is desperation for that position specifically that is unlike anybody else that they would be trading up for.
I mean, it's unlike anything else in
Yeah.
sport, right? Like
Yes.
there's
Yes.
just nothing else, and in even I was going to say in American sports, but I don't think there's like a position in soccer that you look at like the quarterback of a football team. I guess at the end of the day, we go back to, again, always remembering that mock drafts, nothing really has happened yet. It is just people making guesses and talking at this point. But I think at the end of the day, you go back to how much of the slide can you attribute to smoke screens and how much of it is real. If you're Dan Morgan, is it even worth wasting time on making a strategy or figuring out what your strategy is if Sheduer is still on the board at number 8?
Listen, I'm going to hear you. I don't know. I honestly, I don't even think they'd have to do anything. Like, that's the thing. If you're that desperate for a quarterback, like, why would you not call them? Isn't that how it typically works? Or do you have to call the teams that you think will be quarterback thirsty? I don't think so. I think that they'll call you and be like, what do you need?
Yeah. So I said this one time on the podcast before, during that period in between stints as general manager of the Panthers when Marty Herney was doing the media thing, he told me one time that part of what you do at the combine is you start to have like the precursor conversations of a deal. Hey, if player X is already gone, but player Y is still on the board, what would it take for us to get into your position? Or what would it take for you to come up to our position? So I would guess he would know who to call if he hasn't heard from by a certain amount of time left on that clock. But yeah, you're right. Like if somebody is like, if the Giants at number 3 decide that they have to, you've got to get Abdul Carter. He's just too good to pass over, even though you do need a quarterback. And they can come up with some creative way to get back to number 8 that works for the Carolina Panthers. I would imagine that the Giants have already figured that out, and there's nothing the Panthers need to do at this point other than say yes or no.